Hey guys, Eugene here. This is one of the darkest revenge stories I've ever heard. Rowan Vale woke up to white light. At first, he did not understand where he was. The ceiling above him was too clean. The air smelled like medicine. Something was beeping beside his bed. Then pain arrived. Sharp pain in his ribs. Heavy pain in his left arm. A deep burning pain in his chest every time he tried to breathe. He tried to move, but his body refused. Only his eyes moved. Slowly, carefully. A hospital room. A curtain. A machine. A glass of water he could not reach. Then he heard voices near the door. Two nurses were speaking quietly. "He is awake," one asked. "Almost," the other said. "He keeps going in and out." Did his parents answer? There was a pause. A strange pause. Long enough for Rowan to feel fear before he even heard the answer. "Yes," the nurse said softly. "And?" The first nurse lowered her voice. "His father said not to call again unless his condition becomes critical." The second nurse said nothing. Then she asked, "And his mother?" Another pause. Longer this time. She said, "Call if he dies." Rowan stared at the ceiling. He did not blink. For a moment, he thought the pain medicine was making him hear things. No mother would say that. No father would say that. Not about their own son. But deep inside, Rowan knew the truth. They would. Of course they would. The crash had broken his bones. But that sentence broke something older. Something that had been begging for love his whole life. And in that hospital bed, unable to move, Rowan finally understood. He had survived the accident. But to his parents, he was already dead. Before that night, people thought Rowan Vale was lucky. They saw the family name, the expensive house, the private schools, the clean suits, the perfect family photos in local magazines. They saw his father, Rowan Vale, standing beside mayors, senators, hospital boards, and charity directors. They saw his mother, Morel, smiling at galas in elegant dresses, speaking about compassion, family, and community. They saw money. They saw status. They saw power. And they thought Rowan had been born into safety. But there are houses where no one hits you, and still every room hurts. The Vale house was one of them. Dorian was not a loud man. That made him more dangerous. He rarely shouted. He rarely lost control. He did not need to. He could look at Rowan for 3 seconds and make him feel 10 years old again. Weak. Small. Wrong. Dorian built one of the largest construction companies in the state. Valecrest Development. Luxury towers. Hospitals. Hotels. Government housing projects. His company built the city's skyline. His foundation claimed to help the poor. His speeches were about honesty, responsibility, and family. People trusted him because he looked like a man who deserved trust. Rowan knew that look was a costume. Morel was different. She was beautiful, calm, and polished. In public, she touched Rowan's shoulder gently. In private, she spoke to him like he was a stain on expensive fabric. "Stand straighter. Do not mumble. Do not look so wounded. People can feel weakness, Rowan." When he was a child, he used to believe if he became better, she would love him. Better grades. Better posture. Better clothes. Better smile. But love in that house was not something you earned. It was something they gave when it helped their image. And Rowan rarely helped their image. His older brother, Callow, had been different. Callow was everything Dorian wanted. Confident. Athletic. Bold. Charming. He could walk into a room and make adults laugh. Rowan usually stood behind him and watched. Then Callow died at 17 in a boating accident. After that, the house changed forever. Dorian became colder. Morel became quieter. And Rowan became the living reminder of the son they lost. No one said it directly, but Rowan felt it every day. At dinner. In silence. In glances. In sentences that seemed small to other people. If you've ever been betrayed by people you trusted, this story is for you. Subscribe and stay until the end. Once, when Rowan was 16, he heard Morel speaking on the terrace to a family friend. The woman said, "At least you still have Rowan." Morel was quiet for a moment. Then she answered, "Yes, at least." 2 words. Soft words. But Rowan understood them perfectly. He stood behind the glass door and felt his childhood end. From that day on, he stopped asking why his parents did not look at him the same way they looked at old photos of Callow. He already knew. The wrong son had survived. At 26, Rowan worked in the finance department of Valecrest Development. He did not choose the job. Dorian chose it for him. "You need structure," his father said. But Rowan understood the real meaning. Dorian wanted him close. Watched. Controlled. Rowan reviewed invoices, contractor payments, charity reports, and development budgets. The work was boring. Until one night, it became dangerous. It started with one payment. A transfer from the Vale Family Housing Fund to a contractor Rowan did not recognize. The company had a name that sounded official. Northline Civic Repair. But it had no real address. No staff. No website. No tax history before that year. Rowan searched deeper. Then he found another company. Then another. Small payments became large payments. Large payments became a pattern. Money meant for affordable housing was moving through fake contractors. Money meant for families who had nowhere to go. Money meant for single mothers, veterans, disabled people, and children. Millions of dollars were gone. And every approval chain led back to Dorian. Or to Morel's private foundation account. Rowan sat alone in the office after midnight, staring at the numbers. His hands were cold. He wanted to be wrong. For once in his life, he wanted to be stupid. But the files were too clear. His parents were not just cruel. They were stealing from the people they claimed to protect. Then Rowan found an archived memo with a name he did not know. Osric Hale. Next to the name were 5 words. Settlement closed. No further contact. Rowan printed the page and hid it in his bag. He did not know why the name mattered. But something about it felt like a locked door. And he had just found the keyhole. Behind him, a voice spoke. "What are you doing here so late?" Rowan froze. Dorian stood in the doorway. Perfect suit. Calm face. Cold eyes. Rowan quickly closed the folder on his screen. Finishing reports. Dorian looked at the printer. Then at Rowan's bag. Then back at his son. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Finally, Dorian said, "You were always curious at the wrong times." Rowan forced himself to breathe normally. "It is my job to check reports." "No," Dorian said. "Your job is to understand your place." The words were quiet, but they landed like a threat. Then Dorian smiled. Not warmly, politely, like a man ending a business meeting. "Go home, Rowan." That night, Rowan did not sleep. 3 days later, Morel called him. She never called unless something was required. "Your father expects you at the Meridian Gala tomorrow," she said. "I have work. You have an appearance." Rowan closed his eyes. "I do not want to go." Morel laughed softly. It was not a kind laugh. "Wanting is for children." He said nothing. She continued. "There will be investors, donors, politicians, and press. You will wear a dark suit. You will smile. You will not look tired." Then she paused. "And Rowan?" "What?" "Do not bring your sadness into the room. It makes people uncomfortable." The call ended. Rowan stood in his small apartment, holding the phone. His family was rich, but his apartment was modest. He paid for it himself. Dorian mocked him for it often. "My son wants to pretend he is ordinary." People laughed when Dorian said that. Rowan never did. That night, Rowan took the printed page about Osric Hale and hid it under a loose floorboard. He also copied several financial files onto a small drive. Not enough to destroy Dorian, but enough to prove Rowan had seen something real. He told himself he was being careful, but the truth was simpler. He was afraid. And sometimes fear is the only honest friend you have left. The Grand Meridian Hotel looked like it had been built for people who never apologized. Golden chandeliers, white flowers, crystal glasses, soft music, reporters near the entrance, investors at every table. Dorian loved rooms like this. Rooms where money wore perfume and lies wore tuxedos. Rowan arrived at 7:41 p.m. Morel saw him immediately. She moved toward him with a public smile. The moment she was close enough, her voice turned cold. "You are late." There was traffic. There is always traffic. Adults plan ahead. She adjusted his tie too tightly. "You look pale." "I am fine." "No," she said. "You look wounded." "Try not to." Rowan stared at her. "Do you ever hear yourself?" Her eyes sharpened. "Do not start tonight." Then Dorian appeared beside them. He placed one hand on Rowan's shoulder. To the room, it looked fatherly. To Rowan, it felt like a hand holding him in place. "Tonight matters," Dorian said. "I know." "No," Dorian replied. "You know facts. You rarely understand consequences." Rowan looked at him. For 1 second, he wanted to say everything. "I know about the shell companies. I know about the stolen housing money. I know your charity is a machine for theft." But he stayed silent. Because he had learned one thing from watching Dorian. Never attack power until your proof is stronger than their first lie. And Dorian was very good at first lies. At 8:30, Dorian stepped onto the stage. The room stood and clapped before he even spoke. That was how power worked. People applauded the image before they knew the truth. Dorian smiled at the crowd. "Tonight is about family," he began. Rowan almost laughed. "Family is the first shelter we ever know," Dorian continued. "And every person deserves shelter." Morel lowered her eyes as if she was deeply moved. Cameras flashed. People nodded. Rowan stood near the back of the room and felt sick. Every word was beautiful. Every word was false. Dorian spoke about poor families, struggling children, medical clinics, and affordable homes. He made cruelty sound like kindness. He made theft sound like service. When the speech ended, the applause was thunderous. Dorian looked across the room and found Rowan. His smile stayed the same, but his eyes said, "Behave." 40 minutes later, a staff member approached Rowan. "Mr. Vale, your father asked for you." Rowan followed him through a side hallway into a private office behind the ballroom. Dorian was waiting inside. A black leather folder lay on the desk. "Take this to my car," Dorian said. Rowan did not touch it. "What is it?" Dorian's jaw tightened slightly. "A folder." "What kind of folder?" Dorian looked up slowly. "Careful." Outside the room, music played softly. Inside, the air felt sharp. Rowan stepped closer. "I am not your assistant." "No," Dorian said. "You are my son. That is why I have been patient." Patient. As if Rowan was a problem Dorian had kindly tolerated. Dorian pushed the folder toward him. "Take it to the car." Rowan picked it up. It felt too light. Almost empty. His instincts screamed at him. But old habits are hard to kill. Obey first. Question later. He walked back toward the ballroom holding the folder. Each step felt wrong. When Rowan entered the ballroom again, the music stopped. Not slowly. All at once. Morel stood near the center of the room with one hand pressed to her chest. Her face was pale, but her eyes were calm. Too calm. Dorian entered behind Rowan. Then Morel said loudly, "Where are the transfer documents?" The room turned toward them. Rowan froze. "What?" Morel looked at the folder in his hand. "The Foundation transfer documents. They were in that folder." Rowan opened it. Empty. Except for one small black USB drive. His stomach dropped. A trap. A clean one. A prepared one. Morel covered her mouth. "Oh my God." Whispers began around them. "What happened? Are documents missing? Is that Dorian's son?" Dorian looked at Rowan with perfect disappointment. Not anger. Pain. A father wounded by a troubled child. "Rowan," he said softly, "please do not make this worse." Morel stepped closer. Her voice trembled just enough. "We wanted to handle this privately." Rowan stared at them. They had rehearsed this. Every word. Every pause. Every expression. Dorian turned toward the guests. "I apologize. My son has been under serious emotional strain for many years." The room changed instantly. Rowan felt it. Suspicion became pity. Pity became judgment. Dorian lowered his voice. Since his brother died, he has struggled to separate grief from reality. There it was. The knife. Not just into his chest. Into the most painful part of his life. Someone whispered, "Poor family." Another voice said, "I heard he had problems." Rowan's face burned, but his blood turned cold. Dorian had not only accused him, he had prepared the room to doubt anything Rowan said next. Rowan spoke carefully. "You stole from the Foundation." Gasps moved through the ballroom. Phones rose. Reporters leaned in. For 1 second, Morel's eyes flashed with real fear. Then she covered it with tears. "Please stop," she whispered. "You are hurting yourself." Rowan looked at her. "You know it is true." Dorian stepped close enough that only Rowan could hear him. "You are finished." Then he turned back to the room. "My son needs help." Tonight he took confidential documents and attempted to damage this family and this foundation. "No," Rowan said. But the words sounded small in a room that had already chosen its truth. Security came next. 2 men in black suits. One touched Rowan's arm. "Sir, you need to come with us." I did nothing. Dorian looked heartbroken. Morel cried quietly. The guests stared. Cameras recorded. And Rowan understood the trap fully. If he fought, he looked unstable. If he shouted, he looked guilty. If he stayed silent, the accusation survived. They had built a cage out of perception. And everyone in that ballroom was helping hold the bars. The guards escorted him through the side hallway. The last thing Rowan heard was Dorian's voice behind him. "Please give my family privacy." "My family. Not my son. My family." Then the door opened. Rain hit Rowan's face, and the ballroom disappeared behind him. Outside, the world felt unreal. His suit was soaked in seconds. His phone vibrated nonstop. Videos were already spreading. Dorian Vale's son removed from charity gala. Foundation documents missing after family incident. Troubled heir accuses father during public breakdown. Rowan scrolled with shaking hands. The videos showed only the ending. Not the private office. Not Dorian giving him the folder. Not the trap. Just Rowan standing there, pale and angry, while his mother cried and his father looked broken. People love judging endings when they never saw the setup. A message appeared from Morel. Do not come home tonight. Then one from Dorian. You should have stayed quiet. Rowan stared at it. Not are you safe. Not where are you. Just, you should have stayed quiet. That was when fear became certainty. They were not only protecting a reputation. They were burying evidence. And maybe him with it. Rowan got into his car and drove. He did not know where he was going. The rain made the road shine black. Streetlights stretched across the windshield like broken gold. His hands trembled on the wheel. His phone rang. Dorian. Ignored. Morel. Ignored. Then an unknown number called. Rowan let it ring. A voicemail appeared. He pressed play. A distorted voice spoke. Stop digging, Rowan. His body went still. The voice continued. Your brother did not listen either. The message ended. Rowan stopped breathing. Callow. What did Callow have to do with this? He looked at the road too late. Headlights filled the rearview mirror. A black SUV. Close. Too close. Rowan changed lanes. The SUV followed. He accelerated. So did the SUV. Then it hit him. Hard. His car jerked forward. Rowan gasped and gripped the wheel. What the hell? The SUV hit him again. Harder. His tires slid on the wet road. He tried to brake. The car spun. For one terrible second, he saw the world in pieces. Rain. Lights. Glass. Metal. A guardrail rushing toward him. Then the crash came like thunder. And everything went black. He woke in fragments. A ceiling. A light. A voice. Pain. Then darkness again. When he finally stayed awake, he was in a hospital room. His throat felt dry. His body felt broken. Every breath cut through his ribs. His left arm was in a cast. His forehead was bandaged. A machine beeped beside him. He tried to speak. Only a weak sound came out. Two nurses stood near the door. One held a phone. Yes, she said quietly. He regained consciousness. A pause. No, sir. He is not able to speak clearly yet. Another pause. The nurse's face tightened. I understand. She ended the call. The second nurse asked, Are they coming? The first nurse looked toward Rowan. She thought his eyes were closed. They were not. No. What did they say? The nurse hesitated, then whispered. His father said to call only if he dies. The room became silent. Then the second nurse asked, And the mother? The first nurse looked down. She said the same. Rowan did not move. He could not. But inside him, something fell forever. He had imagined many kinds of cruelty from his parents. Coldness, blame, punishment. But this was different. This was absence. Clean. Final. They did not even hate him enough to come. They simply did not care whether he lived. A tear slid from the corner of his eye into his hair. He hated himself for it. Then the door opened. A man stepped inside. Older. Maybe late 50s. Gray coat. Calm eyes. Not a doctor. Not police. He carried no flowers. No smile. Only a small notebook. The nurses looked at him. Family, one asked. The man looked at Rowan. No. Then you cannot be here. The man's voice stayed calm. He needs someone in this room who is not afraid of Dorian Vale. The name changed the air. The nurses exchanged a look. The older man stepped closer to Rowan's bed. My name is Osric. Rowan's fingers twitched. Osric. The name from the file. The settlement note. No further contact. Osric noticed the recognition in his eyes. So you found my name. Rowan tried to speak. Pain stopped him. Osric pulled a chair beside the bed and sat down. I saw your crash. Rowan stared at him. The black SUV did not stop, Osric said. But I got the plate. Rowan's heart began beating faster. Osric leaned forward. And before you ask, no? I do not think it was an accident. The machine beside the bed beeped faster. A nurse moved closer, worried. Osric raised one hand gently. He needs the truth more than comfort. Then he looked back at Rowan. Your father destroyed me 6 years ago. Your mother helped him. I lost my job, my reputation, and my savings. Rowan blinked slowly. Osric's voice remained calm. I was a forensic accountant. I found the same thing you found. The room seemed smaller now. Fake contractors. Stolen foundation money. Hidden transfers. I tried to report it. He paused. Then they made me look unstable too. Rowan's eyes burned. The same method. The same pattern. Not a mistake. A system. Osric reached into his coat and placed a small envelope on the table beside the bed. Inside is the SUV plate, my contact, and one piece of advice. Rowan stared at the envelope. Osric stood. Do not accuse them again until you can prove more than they can deny. He walked toward the door, then stopped. And Rowan? Rowan looked at him. Osric's face hardened. Your brother Callow came to me before he died. The monitor beeped faster. Osric did not explain. Not yet. He only said one final thing. I do not believe his death was simple. Then he left. The room became quiet again. But it was not the same quiet as before. Before, silence felt like abandonment. Now it felt like a locked door. And somewhere behind that door was the truth. Rowan looked at the envelope beside his bed. His body was broken. His name was ruined. His parents had abandoned him. A black SUV had tried to push him off the road. And a stranger had just told him his dead brother might have been the first victim. For the first time that night, Rowan did not feel only pain. He felt something colder. Something patient. Something that did not scream. It waited. Because some sons do not come back begging for love. Some sons come back with proof. Rowan disappeared 3 weeks after the crash. Officially, nobody knew where he went. Unofficially, people assumed rehab. Or a psychiatric clinic. Or Europe. The internet created stories faster than facts. Some people said he stole money from his father. Some said he had a nervous breakdown. Others claimed he attacked someone at the gala. Dorian never corrected any of it. That was the genius of men like him. He understood one simple truth. If people repeat enough versions of a lie, the victim becomes too exhausted to fight any of them. And while the city slowly forgot Rowan Vale, Osric taught him how powerful people really survive. The house near the lake looked abandoned from the outside. That was intentional. Old wood. Small windows. A broken mailbox. Nothing about it suggested secrets. But the basement was different. Rows of file boxes. Maps on walls. Hard drives. Financial records. Photographs connected with red string like something from a crime documentary. At the center of the room was one name written across a large whiteboard. Valecrest. Rowan stood there silently the first night. Osric watched him carefully. You still look shocked, he said. I thought my father was corrupt, Rowan answered quietly. I didn't think he was this. Osric nodded slowly. Most monsters survive because people refuse to imagine the full size of them. He handed Rowan a thick file. Inside were years of records. Missing housing funds. Bribed inspectors. Fake contractors. Disappearing witnesses. Destroyed lawsuits. And at least 4 suspicious deaths connected indirectly to Valecrest projects. Rowan looked up sharply. You think my father killed people? Osric shook his head. No. Men like Dorian rarely touch blood themselves. He pointed to another name. Morel. She is more dangerous. That surprised Rowan. His mother had always seemed colder than evil. Elegant. Distant. Cruel in quiet ways. But murder? Osric noticed the hesitation in his face. You still think she's just a woman standing beside a powerful man? Rowan said nothing. Osric stepped closer. That's exactly why she survives. The recovery was slow. Painkillers made Rowan dizzy for weeks. His ribs healed badly. His left hand still shook sometimes. At night he dreamed about the SUV. Headlights in the mirror. Rain on glass. Metal screaming. And always the same feeling afterward. Not fear. Abandonment. Every morning Osric forced him to work anyway. Again he would say, again, again, again. Financial tracing. Corporate structures. Media manipulation. Public records. Legal loopholes. Osric taught him how powerful people bury crimes legally. Not with guns. With paperwork. With reputation. With time. The law protects evidence, Osric said one night. But reputation controls whether people care about evidence. That sentence stayed inside Rowan's head for months. By the second month, Rowan stopped checking social media. At first, he could not stop himself. Every video hurt. Every comment felt personal. Rich, spoiled psycho. Poor parents. He should be locked up. But Osric forced him to understand something brutal. They are not attacking you, he said. They are attacking the version of you they were given. Rowan stared at the screen. What's the difference? Osric looked at him calmly. The version is weak. You are not. That was the first time anyone had ever said that to Rowan. Weakness. That word had followed him his entire life. From Dorian. From Morel. From school. From himself. Osric was the first person who looked at his pain and saw survival instead of failure. And that changed something dangerous inside Rowan. 3 months after the crash, Osric finally told him about Callow. The truth came slowly. Like poison. Callow had contacted Osric 1 year before his death. At first, he only wanted answers about suspicious financial transfers inside Valecrest. But the deeper Callow investigated, the stranger things became. There were hidden accounts. Government contracts altered after approval. Properties purchased through dead companies. And one private offshore account connected only to Morel. Your brother was terrified near the end, Osric admitted. That doesn't sound like Callow. That's because you only knew the version your parents allowed people to see. Osric handed Rowan an old printed email. It was from Callow. The message was short. If something happens to me, do not trust the accident report. Rowan reread the sentence 3 times. His throat tightened. You think they killed him? Osric stayed silent too long. That silence was answer enough. Winter arrived. Snow covered the lake house. The city moved on without Rowan. And that was exactly what Osric wanted. The deadliest thing you can become is forgotten, he explained. Why? Because people stop watching forgotten men. Rowan slowly began understanding the strategy. If he returned too early, Dorian would crush him again. The media already saw Rowan as unstable. His parents controlled the narrative. They had money, lawyers, political connections, journalists, police contacts. Meanwhile, Rowan had broken ribs, a destroyed reputation, and one old forensic accountant nobody trusted anymore. So they waited. And while the city forgot him, Rowan transformed. He cut his hair shorter, grew a beard, started training every morning despite the pain. Not because he wanted revenge fantasy muscles. Because Osric believed physical discipline changed emotional discipline. Your father spent years teaching your body to expect defeat, Osric said. We are removing that habit. At first, Rowan hated him for it. Then he understood. Pain became structure. Structure became focus. Focus became control. And slowly, the frightened son who begged for love began disappearing. One night, Osric handed Rowan a folder marked Caller Identity Unknown. Inside was the voicemail transcript from the night of the crash. Your brother did not listen either. Rowan looked up. You traced it. Partially. Osric pointed at a location map. The call came from a prepaid phone purchased 2 miles from a Valecrest construction site. That proves nothing. No, Osric agreed. But this does. He slid another paper forward. A security report. The black SUV from Rowan's crash belonged to a private security company contracted by Valecrest. Rowan felt cold. Why wasn't this in the police report? Osric laughed softly. Because the report disappeared for 11 days before becoming official. Rowan stared at the paper. 11 days. Enough time to rewrite anything. Enough time to erase truth. Enough time to destroy evidence. He suddenly understood something horrifying. The crash investigation was never real. It was cleanup. Months passed. Then one night, Rowan found Morel's name connected to something unexpected. A medical foundation overseas. At first it looked harmless. Then Osric discovered the foundation did not exist physically. No office. No employees. No medical work. Just money transfers. Millions moving through empty accounts. What is she doing? Rowan asked quietly. Osric stared at the records. Not charity. Then what? Osric looked uneasy for the first time. I think your mother launders money for people outside Valecrest. Rowan frowned. What people? Osric answered honestly. I don't know yet. And somehow that was worse. Because monsters are terrifying. But hidden monsters are worse. By year 2, Rowan no longer felt like himself. His old self had been emotional. Reactive. Hungry for approval. This version watched quietly. Learned quietly. Prepared quietly. He understood now why powerful people survived scandals. Most victims wanted immediate justice. Immediate truth. Immediate revenge. But real power moved slower. Like architecture. Everything calculated. Everything patient. Osric once told him. The first emotional reaction is usually the trap. Rowan never forgot it. Then the first crack appeared. A former Valecrest accountant contacted Osric anonymously. She wanted immunity. In exchange, she offered files. Real files. Internal transfer logs. private meeting records, hidden contracts. But there was one condition. She'll only meet Rowan, Osric said. Why me? Osric's expression darkened. Because she knew Callow. The meeting happened inside an empty diner at 2 a.m. The accountant's name was Evelyn. She looked exhausted, terrified, like someone who had not slept peacefully in years. When Rowan sat down across from her, she studied his face carefully. You look like him now, she whispered. Callow. She nodded slowly. He looked exactly like this before he died. Rowan's stomach tightened. Evelyn slid a flash drive across the table. Everything I could save is there. Why help me? Evelyn looked down at her coffee. Because your brother tried to stop them. Silence. Then she added, and because your mother scares me more than your father. That sentence stayed with Rowan long after the meeting ended. The files changed everything. Inside were transaction records proving charity funds were diverted through shell companies. Audio recordings from private meetings. Bribes. Illegal property deals. And one video clip. Just 47 seconds long. Rowan watched it 3 times. Then a fourth. Dorian stood inside a parking garage speaking with 2 men Rowan did not recognize. The audio was distorted, but one sentence was clear. If my son becomes a problem, handle it quietly. Rowan looked at Osric. Neither spoke for several seconds. Finally, Rowan whispered. That was before the crash. Osric nodded once. The room suddenly felt colder. Because suspicion was one thing. Evidence was another. And now Rowan finally had something real. But Osric did not celebrate. Instead, he looked worried. That video is dangerous. It proves everything. No, Osric replied calmly. It proves your father feared exposure. That's not enough yet. Rowan stared at him. What more do we need? Osric's eyes hardened. We need something they cannot survive. Rowan realized then that Osric was not building a scandal. He was building destruction. Legal destruction. Financial destruction. Public destruction. The kind that erased powerful families forever. And suddenly Rowan understood something else. Osric had been preparing for this long before Rowan arrived. Maybe even before Callow died. That night Rowan could not sleep. He sat alone in the basement office staring at the evidence board. Dorian, Morel, Callow, the SUV, the shell companies, the fake charities, the hidden accounts. Years of lies connected together like veins under skin. Then Rowan noticed something strange. One photograph was missing. He turned toward Osric. The judge. Osric looked up. What? The judge connected to the housing contracts. His photo is gone. Osric froze for half a second. Too long. Rowan stood slowly. What happened? Osric's expression changed. Not fear. Calculation. He died this morning. Rowan felt his stomach tighten. How? Osric stayed silent. Then finally answered. Car accident. The room became completely quiet. Rain tapped softly against the basement windows. And for the first time since the crash, Rowan felt something worse than anger. He felt hunted. Because suddenly the pattern was impossible to ignore. People connected to the truth were dying. And whoever stood behind it all was still watching. Still protecting the machine. Still cleaning up loose ends. Then Osric spoke quietly. We're running out of time. Rowan looked at the evidence board again. Years ago, he was a lonely son begging to be loved. Now he was standing inside a hidden basement preparing for war against one of the most powerful families in the state. And somewhere beyond those walls, Dorian and Morel still believed their broken son had disappeared forever. They had no idea he was coming back. Not emotional. Not desperate. Not weak. This time Rowan would return with evidence. And evidence, unlike pain, could not be gaslit forever. 5 years after the crash, Rowan Vale returned to the city under a different name. Not as a son, not as a victim, as a weapon built slowly and carefully from patience. The city did not recognize him at first. The beard helped. The shorter hair helped. The calm helped most of all. The old Rowan carried pain openly. This version carried control. To the public, he was introduced as Ronan Gray, independent financial compliance consultant, specialist in public corruption investigations. Recommended quietly through state oversight channels. Exactly the kind of man wealthy executives pretended to welcome while secretly fearing. And Dorian Vale invited him directly into Valecrest. That was the beautiful part. The monster opened the door himself. The conference room overlooked the city skyline. Glass walls, long black table, expensive silence. Dorian sat at the center beside attorneys, investors, and city officials. Morel sat to his left in white silk, elegant and perfectly composed. Then Rowan entered. No dramatic music. No emotional speech. No revenge smile. Just quiet footsteps. Dorian glanced at him once politely. No recognition. Morel barely looked up. A woman from the City Oversight Board spoke first. Mr. Gray will be reviewing internal compliance concerns connected to the renewal initiative. Dorian smiled smoothly. Of course. Valecrest fully supports transparency. Rowan sat across from him, opened his folder, and finally looked directly into his father's eyes for the first time in 5 years. Nothing moved on Rowan's face. But inside him, old memories collided violently. The hospital room, the voicemail, the ballroom humiliation, the crash, the silence afterward. Still, he felt nothing, and that frightened him more than anger ever had. Good, Rowan said calmly. Then let's begin with the missing foundation transfers. Morel's pen stopped moving. Just slightly. But Rowan noticed. Dorian leaned back casually. I'm sure there's a simple explanation. There usually is, Rowan replied. Then he slid the first document across the table. A shell contractor payment tied directly to Valecrest. Then another. Then another. Dates. Accounts. Approvals. Patterns. The room slowly changed. Investors stopped smiling. Attorneys began whispering. City officials exchanged looks. Dorian remained calm. Too calm. What exactly are you implying, Mr. Gray? Rowan met his eyes. That millions in housing funds disappeared through fraudulent contractors connected to your private foundation. Morel finally looked up fully. And for one tiny second, recognition appeared. Not certainty. Instinct. Something about Rowan's voice disturbed her. Dorian noticed her reaction immediately. That worried him more than the accusations. Because Dorian trusted numbers. But he feared instincts. The investigation expanded over the next month. Quietly at first, then aggressively. Auditors entered Valecrest offices. Bank requests were filed. Old contractors were questioned. 3 executives resigned suddenly. A city inspector disappeared for 2 days before returning with a lawyer. The press began asking uncomfortable questions. For the first time in years, Dorian looked tired in public. But he was still dangerous. One evening Rowan returned to his apartment and found the door unlocked. Nothing was stolen. Nothing moved. Except for one thing. A photograph sat on the kitchen table. Callow, his older brother. On the back, someone had written, "Stop before you end like him." Rowan stared at the message for a long time, then calmly burned the photo in the sink. Fear no longer controlled him. That was the problem. The machine had spent years trying to break him emotionally. Instead, it removed his ability to scare easily. 2 nights later, Morel requested a private meeting. Not through lawyers. Not through officials. Personally. That alone told Rowan everything. She was nervous. The meeting took place inside a private art gallery after closing hours. Dim lights. Empty halls. Paintings worth millions staring down like silent witnesses. Morel stood near a sculpture when Rowan entered. For a moment, neither spoke. Then she said quietly, "It's you." Not a question. A realization. Rowan closed the door behind him. "Yes." Morel looked at him carefully. "You changed. You taught me." Something painful moved across her face. Not guilt. Recognition. She stepped closer slowly. "You should have stayed gone." That sounds familiar. Morel's jaw tightened. "You have no idea what you're involved in." Rowan almost laughed. "That's the first honest thing anyone in this family has said." Morel lowered her voice. "Your father thinks he controls everything. You don't." Her silence answered. And suddenly Rowan understood. Dorian was not the top of the machine. Neither was Morel. They were both trapped inside something larger. Morel looked genuinely afraid for the first time in Rowan's life. "End this investigation," she whispered. "Why?" "Because there are people you cannot fight." Rowan stepped closer. "Did those people kill Callow?" Morel froze. Completely. That silence was louder than screaming. Rowan felt cold spread through his chest. "You know they did." Morel's eyes filled with tears. Real tears this time. Not performance. Not manipulation. Fear. "You need to leave the city," she whispered. "Tonight." Rowan stared at her. For years he dreamed about hearing regret from his mother. But this was not regret. This was survival. Even now, she was trying to protect herself first. And somehow that hurt more. Then Morel said the sentence Rowan would never forget. "Your brother thought exposing them would save people." A pause. "It only got him killed." That night Rowan told Osric everything. The old accountant listened carefully without interrupting. Then he walked to the evidence board slowly. "We're close," Osric said. "No," Rowan replied quietly. "We're dead if we move wrong." Osric nodded once. "Correct." The room became silent. Finally Rowan asked, "Who are they?" Osric looked tired suddenly. "Older. Developers. Politicians. Financial groups. People who build entire cities and bury entire scandals." "And my parents?" "Useful." That word hit Rowan hard. Useful. All those years Dorian acted untouchable. All those years Morel controlled everyone around her. And in the end, they were tools too. Osric turned toward him. "Which means something important." "What?" "If powerful people start seeing Dorian as a liability." Rowan finished the sentence. "They'll sacrifice him." Osric smiled slightly. "Now you understand." The final move happened 3 weeks later. Public hearing. City Oversight Committee. Press everywhere. Cameras live. Exactly where Dorian always felt safest. Publicly respected men rarely fear microphones. That was their weakness. Dorian entered confidently. Morel beside him. Lawyers behind them. Reporters shouted questions. He smiled politely. Like always. Then Rowan walked into the hearing room under his real name. The silence hit instantly. People recognized him slowly. Whispers spread across the room. "That's him. Dorian's son. I thought he disappeared." "What the hell?" Dorian stopped walking. For the first time in Rowan's life. His father looked afraid. Not emotional. Not angry. Afraid. Morel went pale immediately. The committee chair looked confused. "Mr. Gray." Rowan placed a folder on the table. "My real name is Rowan Vale." The room exploded with noise. Cameras flashed violently. Reporters began shouting questions. Dorian recovered fast. Too fast. He stood calmly. "My son is mentally unwell." There it was again. The old weapon. The old strategy. But this time Rowan was ready. He connected his laptop to the screen and pressed play. The parking garage video appeared. Dorian's face on camera. Clear enough. Cold enough. Then the audio. "If my son becomes a problem, handle it quietly." The room went silent. True silence. Not polite silence. Fear silence. Dorian's face changed for half a second. Only half. But it was enough. Rowan continued. Documents appeared next. Bank transfers. Shell companies. Offshore accounts. Contract fraud. Bribes. Missing housing money. Then Rowan showed the repaired SUV records connected to Valecrest security. Then the altered police timeline. Then the hidden settlement files. One piece after another. Calmly. Patiently. No screaming. No emotional breakdown. Just evidence. Pure evidence. The exact thing Dorian spent years trying to destroy. Morel suddenly stood up. "Stop this." Her voice cracked. The room turned toward her. And Rowan realized something shocking. She was not trying to stop him anymore. She was trying to stop what came after. Because she knew. The machine behind Valecrest was now watching publicly. Dorian looked at her sharply. "Morel." Too late. People smelled panic now. And panic spreads faster than blood. Then Rowan made the final move. He played Kalos' video. His dead brother appeared on screen. Alive. Afraid. Speaking directly to the camera. "If something happens to me, do not believe the accident report." The room froze completely. Even reporters stopped moving. Callow continued. "Dorian knows about the money. Morel moves it. If I disappear, investigate the foundation." Morel covered her mouth. Dorian whispered something under his breath Rowan could not hear. Then the final sentence came. "Rowan, if you see this, I'm sorry I left you alone with them." The video ended. Silence. Total silence. And in that silence, Rowan watched his father finally understand something terrible. The story was no longer controllable. The machine had cracked open publicly. No amount of money could erase what millions of people had just watched live. Dorian stood slowly. His face looked older now. Smaller somehow. Then federal agents entered the room. Not dramatic. Not cinematic. Quiet. Efficient. One approached Dorian directly. Another approached Morel. People moved aside immediately. Like fear itself had entered the building. Dorian looked at Rowan one final time. And for the first time in his life, Rowan saw no superiority in his father's eyes. Only hatred. And underneath it, defeat. "You destroyed this family," Dorian said quietly. Rowan stared at him calmly. "No." A pause. "You did." Agents escorted Dorian away. Morel stopped beside Rowan before leaving. For years he imagined this moment. Thought maybe she would apologize. Maybe cry. Maybe finally act like a mother. Instead she whispered, "You should have stayed dead." Then she walked away in handcuffs. And strangely, that was the moment Rowan truly became free. Because finally, completely, forever, he stopped needing them to love him. 3 months later, Valecrest collapsed. Executives turned on each other. Politicians denied connections. Investors disappeared. Lawsuits flooded the company. The media called it one of the largest corruption scandals in state history. Dorian was charged with fraud, conspiracy, obstruction, and financial crimes. Morrell accepted a deal after hidden offshore accounts were confirmed. Several officials resigned quietly. 2 witnesses vanished before trial. One was later found dead. The machine still existed somewhere in the dark. But Valecrest had become too public to protect completely. Osric called it a partial victory. Rowan called it enough. One evening, almost 6 years after the crash, Rowan stood beside the lake near Osric's house. Cold wind moved across the water. Everything was quiet. Osric handed him a small envelope. "What's this?" "Your brother's final letter." Rowan froze. "You never told me there was a letter. I wanted you to survive first." Rowan opened it slowly. Callow's handwriting was messy, rushed. The final lines said, "If they break me, don't let them break you too." The worst thing about powerful people is not what they take. It's how they convince you that surviving them is weakness. Rowan stared at the lake for a long time afterward, then finally smiled. Not happily, not sadly, peacefully, because the boy who begged for love died in that hospital room years ago, and the man who survived him no longer needed permission to exist. The city would remember Dorian Vale as a fallen titan. It would remember Morrell as a beautiful liar. It would remember Callow as the dead son who tried to tell the truth. But Rowan understood something deeper. Families do not destroy people in one moment. They do it slowly, with silence, with shame, with conditions attached to love. And sometimes the strongest revenge is not becoming crueler than them. It is surviving long enough to make the truth impossible to bury. The wind moved across the dark water. Osric stood quietly beside him. Then Rowan spoke the final words that ended everything. "They told the hospital to call if I died." A long pause. "They never imagined what would happen if I lived."